Hello, my name is Chris Hare. I'm the project manager for South Downs for All that's been run through the Friends of the South Downs, and I'm standing here in the churchyard of St Mary's Church at Slindon, right in the heart of the South Downs and right in the heart of Sussex. And on Thursday the 16th of June, myself and the Duck Pond Sailors will be singing songs about Sussex history, Sussex folklore, Sussex landscape, which we hope you'll all come along and enjoy. But what I want to talk to you about in this video is Sussex and its history, because one thing very few people are aware of is that Sussex hasn't always been just a county in the same way that Surrey has, or Hampshire has, or Dorset has. Sussex was once a kingdom. There was a king of Sussex and a queen of Sussex. In fact, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle tells us that in 477, Aelle and his 3 sons sailed over the English Channel and landed here and formed the county of Sussex, the county of the South Saxons. And not only was Aelle the first king of Sussex, he was also the Bretwalder. He was the king of kings. So the kings of Wessex and Kent and Mercia all acknowledged him as overlord. And over the years, this kingdom of Sussex prospered, but it was very isolated. It was isolated by the Great Weald, the forest to the north, and then over to the west there were the Chichester levels, and over to the east Romney Marsh, that made it really inaccessible by land. It was easier to travel from the other kingdoms of England to Sussex by sea than it was by land. And its great king was Athelwald, who ruled in the 6th century, and he formed an alliance with King Penda of Mercia, and a war took place with their mutual enemy Wessex, and Sussex and Mercia were triumphant. And the spoils for Sussex were the Meon Valley, which is now in Hampshire, and the Isle of Wight. And the chronicles tell us that 2 Isle of Wight princes were put to death by King Athelwald, who feared they could lead an insurrection at a future date. But the good times didn't last. By the 680s, Sussex was suffering a famine. Things were very, very desperate. And Wessex, under its King Cadwalla, took the opportunity, invaded, and Sussex was overrun and the king overthrown. And from that point on, Sussex became part of Wessex. But this strong identity didn't wither away. There were rebellions. One rebellion in 722 was led by Andhun and Bithrun, and they joined in with rebels in Devon against the rule of Wessex. And this rebellious nature seems to carry on all through the history of Sussex over the centuries. We come to the 11th century, the Godwin family, probably the most powerful family in late Anglo-Saxon England, had their ancestral homes at Bosham, south of Chichester. And of course it was one of their number, Harold, who became King of England and famously or infamously died at the Battle of Hastings with an arrow in his eye. Now you might have thought, well, after that surely the Sussex identity disappeared. After the Normans came here and built their castles and all the land was sequestrated and handed over to Norman lords, surely the Sussex identity would have waned. But this doesn't seem to have been the case. We know through folklore and dialect and legends that people here had a very strong identity of who they were. Which brings me to the Sussex flag. Now, as you drive around England, you'll notice that many counties have flags, but most of them have been created in the last 20 years for tourism purposes. This flag, however, dates back into medieval times. Knights were buried with this emblem emblazoned on their shields. And these birds are martlets, and they have no feet. They're heraldic devices. They're not actual living birds. But this symbol was very powerful, and when the county councils, East Sussex and West Sussex County Council, were created in 1889, they used this emblem. Blue in West Sussex, red in East Sussex. And some people assume that this east-west division is recent, but actually going back to Andhun and Bithrun, one was powerful in the east and one in the west. And it's not surprising because Sussex has a coastline nearly 100 miles long, And given how treacherous the landscape was, how difficult it was to move around, it's not surprising that you had an East and a West Sussex. Come on to a slightly later period, come on to the Tudor period, and again we find a difference between East and West Sussex, that in West Sussex the established church is strong, but in East Sussex there is a tradition of heresy. In the medieval period there had been the Lollards, who lived out in the great woods of the Weald and who would not follow the rules of the church, and who were often blamed for fomenting riot and protest, including the famous Peasants' Revolt of 1381 and the equally dramatic rebellion of Jack Cade in 1450. Most of the rebels came from the Wealden districts. It was known as a place where people did what they like and didn't follow the rules imposed on them either by the state or by the church. And roll on then to the 17th century, the English Civil War, the conflict between the King and Parliament, Charles I and Oliver Cromwell. Basically, West Sussex is royalist and East Sussex is for Parliament. Lewis, very Puritan, Rye, perhaps even more so. And in those days, the three largest towns in Sussex were Chichester, Lewes and Rye. And the Puritanism and Protestantism of Rye had been bolstered by the large number of French Protestants, Huguenots, who'd fled there after the St Bartholomew's Day massacre in France, and they came into East Sussex, and their influence can still be felt many, many generations later. Sussex, until very recently, was noted for its strong accent that is believed to date back to those early Saxon times. Phrases such as "we won't be druv," meaning we won't be pushed around, the sort of stubborn Saxon mind that wouldn't relent to pressure. And other little phrases like, so today if people are talking and they may say at the end of a sentence, "you know what I mean." In Sussex the phrase was "sure-lie." It is going to be a right wet day today, sure-lie. And this would have been a form of speaking, an accent and the use of terminology that would have been remembered just about within living memory, but started to die out really when Sussex changed. And the big change that came to Sussex was the arrival of the railway in the 1840s, which for the first time connected the county to London. London, then the biggest city in the world. And money could be made supplying that great city with produce, and we see the rise of horticulture in Sussex and the seaside towns, small little villages that for generations after generations had had perhaps no more than 300, 400, 500 inhabitants, suddenly mushroom into towns of 5,000, 10,000, 20,000. It was a huge change. This quiet rural backwater that had been poor and underpopulated became prosperous and arguably overpopulated. So Sussex has seen an awful lot of change in the last 200 years, and in the lifetime of those of us living now, we've seen the towns grow ever bigger. We've seen roads crisscross the county. A journey that might have taken 2 or 3 days now can be done in 2 or 3 hours. So it's very difficult to imagine what the Sussex of old times was like compared to today. So it's well worth celebrating. It's a special county. It's a county that's been around a long, long time and hopefully will be around many, many years to come. So please come and join us. Hear our songs, hear about the legends, hear about the folklore, hear about the history here at Slindon on Thursday, the 16th of June, 7 p.m. And go to the website at the end of this video to book your place. Hope to see you there. Thank you.